On a rainy night, the CEO took his girlfriend to a hotel and discovered love in its purest form. Hello, my beautiful family. As the wise Dr. Seuss once said, the more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. I've been carrying a little weight on my heart lately. Perhaps I upset you with my last story. You didn't share your thoughts, and it's left me wondering. Have I disturbed you in any way? If I have, please accept my sincerest apologies. It was never my intention. I treasure each of you more than words can express. Today, I'll let the story speak for itself. No extra chatter, no distractions, just a moment for us to connect through the power of storytelling. I hope you'll stay with me until the very last word. Before we begin, let me take a moment to thank you. Last night, as I celebrated my 30th anniversary, your wishes and love made it truly unforgettable. My heart is so full because of you. Now let's step into the story together. Shall we begin? Manhattan's skyline disappeared behind sheets of relentless rain as Orion Case's Aston Martin crawled through the congested streets of the financial district. The weather matched his mood, turbulent and dark. Another 14-hour day of endless meetings and corporate politics had left him drained. At 32, he was the youngest CEO in Case Industries' history, but success had come at a price. The corner office on the 58th floor felt more like a gilded cage with each passing day. Lightning split the sky, followed by a thunderous boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. Orion's eyes caught sight of a small coffee shop, its warm lights a beacon in the storm. The Stellar Coffee House. He'd passed it countless times but had never stepped inside, preferring the predictability of corporate coffee chains. Tonight, something pulled him toward its weathered blue door. The moment he pushed it open, the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans enveloped him. Rain dripped from his tailored Tom Ford suit as he stood in the entrance, taking in the unexpected charm of the place. Mismatched vintage armchairs clustered around worn wooden tables, local artwork adorned exposed brick walls, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. It was everything his usual corporate haunts weren't. Authentic, lived in, real. You look like you could use a towel. The voice was warm, tinged with amusement but not mockery. Orion turned toward it and felt time slow to a crawl. Callie Grace stood behind the counter, a bright yellow apron tied around her waist, dark curls escaping from a messy bun. Her skin was the color of burnished copper, and her eyes, they were extraordinary, amber flecked with gold, filled with intelligence and humor. A simple silver necklace with a small paintbrush charm rested against her collarbone. I must look like a drowned rat, Orion found himself saying, surprising himself with the self-deprecating humor. In the boardroom he never showed such vulnerability. She laughed, the sound genuine and unrehearsed. More like a drowned CEO, the suit gives you away. Reaching beneath the counter, she produced a clean, white towel. Here, we keep these for emergencies. I'd say this qualifies. Their fingers brushed as he took the towel, and Orion felt an unexpected jolt of electricity race up his arm. He noticed a small splash of blue paint on her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. "You're an artist," he said, gesturing to the paint as he dried his face and hair. Surprise flickered across her features. "Good eye. Yes, I'm an art student at Parsons. This job helps pay the bills while I chase the dream." She moved to the espresso machine, her movements graceful and practiced. "What can I make you?" "Whatever you recommend. I trust your judgment." The words came easily, though trust wasn't something Orion gave freely in his world of hostile takeovers and corporate espionage. "Brave man." Her eyes sparkled as she began working with the machine. "You know, most people in suits like yours take one look at our little shop and keep walking. We're not exactly blue bottle coffee." "Maybe they don't know what they're missing." Orion found himself leaning against the counter, his usual rigid posture relaxing. The rain continued its assault outside, but in here, time seemed to move differently. As Callie worked, she told him about the shop's history, how it had been in the same family for 3 generations, how they sourced their beans from small, independent farms, how the owner let local artists display their work on the walls, commission-free. Her passion for the place was evident in every word. "Here," she said finally, presenting him with a large ceramic mug. Steam rose from the dark liquid in elegant spirals. "Our house special, spiced dark chocolate mocha with a hint of cayenne. I call it the Stormbreaker." Orion took a sip and had to stop himself from groaning in pleasure. The rich chocolate was perfectly balanced with the espresso, and the cayenne provided a subtle heat that bloomed at the back of his throat. "This is incredible." High praise from someone who probably has access to the finest coffee in the city. She began cleaning the espresso machine, but her eyes kept finding their way back to him. "The finest isn't always the best," he said quietly, watching her work. There was something mesmerizing about her presence, an authenticity that was rare in his world of carefully cultivated images and rehearsed personalities. Thunder crashed again outside, and the lights flickered momentarily. The few other customers in the shop barely looked up, too engrossed in their books or laptops. "I should introduce myself properly," he said, extending his hand. "Orion Case." "Callie Grace," she replied, taking his hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm. "Though I already knew who you were, your face has been on every business magazine this month after the Maxwell merger. And yet you treated me like any other drowned rat seeking shelter. Should I have treated you differently?" There was a challenge in her voice, but her smile remained warm. "God, no," Orion replied with feeling. "It's refreshing." They talked as he finished his coffee. He learned that she specialized in mixed media art, that she taught weekend art classes to kids in underfunded schools, that she had a pet gecko named Vincent Van Gecko. Each detail made her more intriguing. She wasn't impressed by his wealth or status. In fact, she gently teased him about his corporate uniform and suggested he try wearing colors sometime. The rain began to ease, and Orion realized he'd been there for over an hour. His phone had buzzed several times, but for the first time in years, he'd ignored it completely. "I should go," he said reluctantly, standing up. "What do I owe you for the coffee?" "On the house," Callie replied. "Consider it a thank you for trusting my recommendation." "That hardly seems fair to your bottom line." "Some things are worth more than money, Mr. Case." She pulled out a simple white business card and wrote something on the back. "But if you're worried about fairness, you can make it up to me by coming back. We have poetry readings on Thursday nights. You look like someone who could use more poetry in his life." Orion took the card, turning it over to find she'd written Stormbreaker in elegant script, followed by Thursday 7 p.m. and her phone number. Poetry readings. He raised an eyebrow, trying to imagine himself at such an event. "Trust my judgment, remember." Her smile was infectious. "Step out of your comfort zone. You might be surprised by what you find." As Orion stepped back into the damp evening, the city felt different somehow. The air was cleaner, the lights brighter. He looked back through the window to see Callie serving another customer, her face animated as she talked. The sight made something shift in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite name. His phone buzzed again. His mother, probably wondering why he'd missed their weekly dinner. The corporate world was waiting to reclaim him, with all its obligations and expectations. But the card in his pocket felt like a key to another life. One where coffee came in mismatched mugs, and art hung on brick walls, and beautiful baristas recommended poetry. Thursday was 3 days away. For the first time in years, Orion Case found himself looking forward to something that wasn't related to business. As he drove home through the clearing sky, he realized he was smiling. The Stormbreaker had lived up to its name, breaking through more than just the weather. Little did he know that this rainy evening, this chance encounter, would be the beginning of a story that would change everything. The universe had conspired to bring together two souls from different worlds, and nothing, not family expectations, not social prejudices, not even his own fears, would be able to stop what was about to unfold. In his pocket, the business card seemed to pulse with possibility. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. Chapter 2. Falling Fast. The first test of their budding relationship came sooner than either expected. The morning after their initial meeting, Orion arrived at Stella Coffee House to find a cluster of paparazzi outside. Someone had tipped off the press about his visits, and now Callie found herself thrust into an unwanted spotlight. "Mr. Case, is it true you're dating a barista?" "Miss, how long have you been seeing the CEO? What are your intentions with the Case heir?" The questions flew like arrows as Callie tried to do her job. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked the espresso machine, unused to such scrutiny. When she nearly scalded herself, Maria stepped in. "Go take your break, honey. Use the back room." Orion found her there, sitting among bags of coffee beans, her sketchbook open but untouched. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have expected this." "Is this what your life is always like?" Her voice was steady, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Unfortunately, but I can make it stop. I'll stay away if—" "Don't you dare!" She stood, facing him with fierce determination. "I'm not afraid of cameras. I'm afraid of letting them change who we are, what this could be." That evening, against the backdrop of media attention, Orion attended his first poetry reading. He arrived late, having dodged reporters, to find the coffee shop transformed. Candlelight cast soft shadows as a young woman on stage spoke of urban forests and concrete dreams. Callie sat in the audience, her sketchbook open, but her eyes found his immediately. He noticed she'd chosen a seat near the back exit, giving him an escape route if needed. The consideration touched him deeply. The next poet took the stage, an elderly man with kind eyes. "This one's for the lovers," he announced, "those brave enough to defy the world's expectations." Orion felt eyes on him throughout the reading, not just from other patrons who recognized him, but from James Werner, his father's old friend and head of the board, who'd apparently followed him there. The message was clear. He was being watched. During a break, Callie showed him her sketches. "I draw what people's words make me feel," she explained. Each piece captured something essential about the poets: loneliness, hope, defiance. "This one's you," she said softly, showing him a man trapped in a suit of armor but with butterflies emerging from the cracks. "Is it too presumptuous?" "It's perfect," he whispered. "You see right through me." Their moment was interrupted by James approaching their table. "Orion, a word?" In the back hallway, James didn't mince words. "The board is concerned about your recent activities, poetry readings, art galleries. This isn't like you." "Maybe it's exactly like me, and none of you ever noticed. Your father would have wanted me to be happy." Returning to Callie, Orion found her in conversation with a well-dressed woman he recognized as Margaret Astor, one of his mother's social circle. "Such talent," Margaret was saying, her smile not reaching her eyes. "You know, I'm always looking for new artists to decorate my summer homes. Of course, we'd need to discuss appropriate compensation for your discretion." Callie's response was pure grace. "I'm afraid my art isn't for sale, Mrs. Astor. Neither is my integrity." The next few weeks brought more challenges. Callie's art school classmates began treating her differently, some sucking up, others accusing her of selling out. Her therapy sessions with underprivileged kids were disrupted by photographers, forcing her to move them to a new location. Yet for every obstacle, they found new ways to connect. Orion started showing up at random times, bringing coffee to her art studio late at night, or meeting her for early morning walks in less frequented parks. They created their own world in stolen moments. One rainy evening, Orion found Callie teaching an art therapy session in a makeshift space, a converted storage room above the coffee shop. The children were creating collages from magazine scraps, and Callie moved among them with natural grace. "Art isn't about being perfect," she was saying to a frustrated young boy. "It's about being true." Watching her, Orion realized he was falling in love not just with her beauty or talent, but with her unwavering authenticity in a world that demanded conformity. Later that night, in her tiny apartment filled with canvases and dreams, they faced their growing feelings. "The board wants me to consider taking a position in London," Orion admitted. "They think some distance would be beneficial." Callie's hand stilled on her current painting, a storm-tossed sea with a lighthouse in the distance. "And what do you think?" "I think I'm tired of letting others chart my course." He took her paint-stained hands in his. "I think you make me brave enough to be myself. Even if being yourself costs you everything. You're not a cost, Callie. You're an investment in happiness." Their kiss tasted of coffee and paint and defiance. Outside, cameras might flash and tongues might wag, but in this moment they were just two hearts finding their true rhythm. The real test came at a charity gala the following week. Orion insisted on bringing Callie as his date, despite his mother's protests. She arrived in a simple black dress, her natural beauty outshining the overdone sophistication around her. Victoria Case's greeting was arctic. "How unique to see art and commerce mingling so freely." "Isn't that what galleries are for, Mother?" Orion countered, his hand firm on Callie's back. Throughout the evening they weathered subtle snubs and not-so-subtle commentary. But when Callie spoke passionately about her art therapy program during dinner, several influential donors took notice. By dessert, she'd secured more funding for her projects than the gala's official charity. "You're a natural," Orion marveled as they escaped to the terrace. "No," she corrected. "I'm just not afraid to be genuine in a room full of masks." Their worlds continued to collide and merge. Orion found himself sketching during board meetings, rough, childish attempts that still somehow helped him think clearer. Callie started learning about corporate structure, not to fit in, but to understand his battles better. The press remained relentless, but they turned it to their advantage. Every photographed coffee shop visit brought more attention to local artists. Every scandal about Orion attending gallery openings sparked discussions about corporate responsibility and arts funding. "We're building bridges," Callie said one evening, as they sat on her fire escape watching the sunset, "between art and commerce, privilege and passion, your world and mine." "No," Orion pulled her close. "We're creating a new world altogether." Their love grew not despite the obstacles, but because of them. Each challenge showed them new facets of each other, Callie's quiet strength, Orion's hidden creativity, their shared courage to choose love over expectation. Little did they know that these early trials were just preparation for the storms ahead. But in these weeks of falling fast and standing strong, they built a foundation that would weather any tempest. Chapter 3. Love Blooms. Spring painted New York Botanical Garden in a canvas of vibrant hues, cherry blossoms dancing on the morning breeze as Orion's Aston Martin pulled up to Callie's Brooklyn apartment. His heart skipped when she emerged, wearing a sundress that captured sunlight itself, the yellow fabric flowing like liquid gold. Her natural curls were loose today, framing her face with wild freedom. "You look beautiful," he said, opening the car door. He'd chosen casual wear, dark jeans and a light blue button-down that Callie had once mentioned brought out his eyes. The absence of his usual suit felt like shedding armor. "And you look human," she teased, reaching up to adjust his collar. Her fingers lingered there, a touch that sent electricity through his skin. "I was beginning to think you were born in a three-piece suit." The drive to the gardens was filled with comfortable conversation that revealed more about their different worlds. Callie told him about her latest art project, a series exploring the intersection of nature and urban life using reclaimed materials from construction sites. "It's about finding beauty in forgotten spaces," she explained, her hands moving expressively as she talked. "Like that abandoned lot near my apartment that's full of wildflowers now. Nature always finds a way to bloom." Orion shared amusing stories from his early days in business, including a catastrophic first presentation where he'd accidentally projected his personal photos instead of quarterly reports. "There I was, 22 years old, showing the board my vacation pictures from Cancun. 'Did you at least look good in the beach photos?' she laughed. 'Terribly sunburned and wearing a Hawaiian shirt my mother still hasn't forgiven me for.' At the gardens, they began in the crystalline conservatory. Tropical flowers created explosions of color against the glass walls, the air heavy with humidity and the sweet perfume of orchids. Callie moved through the space like she belonged there, her artist's eye catching details others might miss. "Look at this," she said, pulling him toward a particularly stunning bloom. "The way the colors gradient from deep purple to almost white. Nature is the greatest artist of all." Orion found himself watching her more than the flowers, mesmerized by the way she saw beauty in every detail. Her enthusiasm was contagious, making him see the world through new eyes. "What do corporate boardrooms look like through an artist's perspective?" he asked as they moved through a corridor of hanging vines. Callie considered this seriously. "Like cages built of expectations, all that glass and steel, designed to intimidate rather than inspire. But even there, I see possibilities. Imagine sunlight painting shadows through those windows, turning power into poetry." In the butterfly pavilion, they stood still as jewel-toned wings fluttered around them. One particularly bold monarch landed on Callie's shoulder, its orange wings pulsing gently. "Don't move," Orion whispered, carefully pulling out his phone to capture the moment. The photo would later become his favorite. Callie's radiant smile, the butterfly perched on her shoulder, sunlight streaming through the glass ceiling, creating a natural halo around her. They enjoyed a picnic lunch in a secluded corner of the rose garden. Orion had arranged for a gourmet spread, but what touched Callie most was discovering he'd remembered to include her favorite cookies from Stella Coffee House. "You remembered," she said softly, holding up one of the lavender shortbread cookies. "I remember everything about you," he replied, reaching out to tuck a stray curl behind her ear. The simple gesture felt more intimate than any kiss. As they ate, their conversations deepened. Callie shared stories of growing up in a small apartment with her artist mother, weekends spent in museums because they were free on Sundays, learning to see beauty in unexpected places. "Mom used to say that art isn't about perfection, it's about truth," she said, trailing her fingers through the grass. "She taught me to paint with my heart, not just my hands. When she got sick, color was how we communicated. Even in the hospital, she made everything beautiful." Orion opened up about his own childhood losses. "After my father died, everyone expected me to become him overnight, but I wanted to do things differently, make the company more than just about profits. Nobody really understood that." "I understand," Callie said, reaching for his hand. "You want to create something meaningful, something that helps people. That's why your charitable initiatives matter so much to you." In the butterfly garden, surrounded by the gentle flutter of wings, Orion found himself sharing dreams he'd never voiced aloud. Sometimes I imagine transforming parts of our office buildings into community spaces, art galleries, workshop areas, places where business and creativity could coexist. Callie's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Think about it. Corporate meetings in rooms filled with local art, executive training programs that incorporate creative thinking exercises, partnerships with art therapy programs. Her enthusiasm sparked something in him, and they spent hours brainstorming possibilities, their ideas flowing as freely as the wine they shared. The sun began its descent, painting the gardens in golden light, but neither wanted the day to end. As evening approached, Orion had one more surprise. He led Callie to the garden's highest point, where a string quartet waited. As the first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune floated through the twilight air, he took her in his arms. "I don't really know how to dance," Callie admitted, looking up at him with trust in her eyes. "Neither do I," he confessed. "Not like this. But maybe we can figure it out together." They swayed together as the music washed over them, the gardens now quiet except for the gentle splash of fountains and the distant cry of birds settling for the night. Other couples had gathered to listen to the music, but for Orion and Callie, the world had narrowed to just them. "When I was little," Callie said, her head resting against his chest, "I used to dream about moments like this, but the reality is so much better than anything I imagined." Orion pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "Callie, I need you to know something. I've lived my whole life following a script, being who everyone expected me to be. But with you, for the first time, I feel like I'm truly myself." She reached up to touch his face, her artist's hands gentle against his skin. "And who is that? Someone who's completely, irrevocably falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Callie's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "Good," she whispered, "because I'm completely, irrevocably falling in love with you too." Their kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. Around them, the gardens had transformed in the twilight, strings of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. The quartet continued playing, their music weaving through the evening air like a blessing. Later, as they walked back to the car hand in hand, Callie stopped to look up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. "Thank you for today," she said. "Not just for the date, but for being you. For letting me see the real Orion Case." He squeezed her hand, knowing that this day marked a turning point. They were no longer just two people sharing coffee and conversation. They were partners, dreamers, two souls who had found something rare and precious in each other. Neither could have known then how their love would be tested in the months to come, how their different worlds would collide in ways both beautiful and painful. But in that moment, surrounded by the beauty they'd shared and the dreams they'd voiced, their love bloomed as naturally and inevitably as the flowers around them. The drive home was filled with comfortable silence, both lost in thoughts of the day and dreams of the future. At Callie's apartment, Orion walked her to the door, neither wanting the evening to end. "Stay," she said softly, and in that one word was a universe of trust and love. That night, as moonlight painted patterns on Callie's bedroom wall, they came together with the same gentle grace that had marked their entire relationship. Each touch was a promise, each kiss a declaration of love that transcended their different worlds. As they drifted off to sleep, the memory of their dance lingered like the last notes of a beautiful song. They had taken the first steps of a longer dance together, one that would lead them through joy and pain, through challenges and triumphs, through a love story that was only beginning to unfold. Chapter 4. The news. 3 months into their relationship, autumn had begun painting Central Park in shades of gold and crimson. Callie sat in her tiny bathroom, staring at the third pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. Like the others, 2 pink lines appeared with unwavering clarity. Her hands trembled as she checked her phone. 15 minutes until her shift at Stella Coffee House. The past week had been a blur of denial and growing certainty. First, the unexplained fatigue that made her nearly fall asleep during her afternoon art classes, then the sudden aversion to the coffee she served daily. Finally, the missed period that could no longer be attributed to stress. Orion had been away on business in London for the past 10 days, negotiating a major merger. Their nightly video calls had become her anchor, but she hadn't mentioned her suspicions. This wasn't news to share over FaceTime. At work, the familiar sense of coffee and freshly baked pastries that usually brought comfort now made her stomach churn. She moved through her shift in a daze, nearly giving a customer almond milk instead of soy, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. "Are you okay, honey?" Maria, the elderly owner of Stella, asked during a quiet moment. "You look pale." "I'm fine." Callie managed a weak smile. "Just tired." Maria's knowing eyes studied her face. "When my daughter was pregnant with her first, she couldn't stand the smell of coffee either." Callie's hands froze on the espresso machine. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's seen it before." Maria patted her hand gently. "Does he know yet?" "He gets back tonight," Callie whispered, tears threatening to spill. I don't know how to tell him." "The truth has a way of finding its own words, mi amor." The rest of her shift passed in a blur. As evening approached, the autumn rain began, drumming against the windows in a rhythm that matched her racing heart. She checked her phone again. A message from Orion. "Just landed. Coming straight to see you. Miss you." At 7, Maria insisted she leave early. Go home. Get cleaned up. Face this moment with a clear head. In her apartment, Callie changed 3 times before settling on a simple sweater dress. The soft blue one Orion had once said brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. She paced her small living room, rehearsing words that felt inadequate no matter how she arranged them. The knock on her door came at 8. When she opened it, Orion stood there in his travel-wrinkled suit, his hair slightly disheveled, holding a bouquet of her favorite wildflowers. The sight of him, so familiar yet somehow new in this moment of change, made her heart clench. "I missed you," he said, pulling her into an embrace that smelled of airplane cabin and his expensive cologne. Then he pulled back, studying her face. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk," she managed, taking his hand and leading him to her worn but comfortable couch. The flowers ended up on her coffee table, next to her sketchbook filled with recent drawings, all of mothers and children, she realized now, her subconscious already knowing what her mind was struggling to accept. "You're scaring me, Callie." Orion's voice was gentle but concerned. He kept hold of her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her palm. "I'm pregnant." The words tumbled out before she could find a gentler way to say them. In the silence that followed, she could hear the rain against her windows, the distant sounds of city traffic, the ticking of her grandmother's old clock on the wall. Orion's hand tightened on hers. When she dared to look at his face, she saw not anger or fear, but a complex mix of emotions she couldn't quite read. "Are you sure?" he asked finally, his voice hoarse. Wordlessly, she went to her bathroom and returned with the 3 tests, laying them on the coffee table next to the flowers. "I took them all this morning, and I think I've known for a few days now." Orion picked up one of the tests, staring at it as if it might hold different answers if he looked long enough. Then, to her complete surprise, he started to laugh, a soft, wondering sound. "Orion?" He set down the test and took both her hands in his. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night at the coffee shop? About some things being worth more than money?" She nodded, tears beginning to fall despite her best efforts to hold them back. You were right. And this? He touched her face, wiping away a tear with his thumb. This is worth more than anything. But your family, the company, we'll have to deal with it. His voice was firm. Callie, I love you. I think I've loved you since that first night in the rain. This baby? It's unexpected, yes, but it's also a miracle. Our miracle. She collapsed against his chest, finally letting out the sobs she'd been holding back all day. His arms came around her, strong and sure, his chin resting on top of her head. I'm scared, she admitted into his shirt. I don't know how to be a mother. My art school loans, my tiny apartment. Hey, he tilted her face up to his. We're in this together, all of it. I know it's not the traditional order of things, but I've never been happier about anything in my life. Really? Instead of answering, he slid off the couch onto one knee, still holding her hands. I was going to do this differently. I have a ring in my safe at home, my grandmother's. I was planning something elaborate, but now I know this moment is perfect exactly as it is. Callie's breath caught in her throat as Orion continued, his voice thick with emotion. Callie Grace, you walked into my life and showed me what really matters. You taught me to see beauty in unexpected places, to trust my heart as much as my head. You're carrying our child, a perfect blend of your creativity and my determination, I hope. Will you marry me? Not because of the baby, but because I want to spend the rest of my life discovering new ways to love you. Through her tears, Callie managed to nod. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. He gathered her into his arms, kissing her with all the joy and fear and wonder of the moment. When they finally broke apart, both of them crying and laughing at once, the rain had stopped. A beam of evening sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the flowers on the table, the positive pregnancy tests beside them, a testament to how life's biggest moments often come unplanned. We should tell your family, Callie said after a while, curled against him on the couch. Tomorrow, Orion said, pulling her closer. Tonight is just for us, for our family. The word family made her hand drift to her still flat stomach. Orion's hand covered hers, and in that moment their world shifted on its axis. Everything would change now, their lives, their plans, their dreams. But as they sat together in the growing darkness of Callie's apartment, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Later that night, as Orion slept beside her, Callie quietly retrieved her sketchbook. In the soft light of her bedside lamp, she began to draw. Not mother and child this time, but a family. Their family. The strong lines of Orion's profile softened in sleep, her own curves gentled by his protective arm around her, and in the space between them, the suggestion of new life beginning to bloom. Outside, the city that had brought them together continued its endless rhythm, unaware that within one small apartment, a love story had just opened its next chapter. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, family expectations, societal judgments, corporate politics. But for now, in the quiet hours of this life-changing night, their love created a bubble of perfect peace, a sanctuary for the three hearts now beating in harmony. Chapter 5. Family Storm. The Case family mansion dominated its corner of the Upper East Side, a limestone behemoth that had witnessed 3 generations of power and privilege. As their car approached the wrought iron gates, Callie took in the manicured gardens where perfectly trimmed topiaries stood like silent sentinels. Even the ivy climbing the walls seemed to grow in deliberate patterns, as if nature itself bent to the Case family's will. "This is where you grew up?" Callie whispered, her hand instinctively moving to protect her still flat stomach. "More like where I was displayed," Orion replied, his jaw tense. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every society event, all performances in the great Case family theatre. The massive oak door opened before they reached it, revealing Harrison, the butler who'd served the family for 40 years. His silver hair and impeccable posture gave him the air of British nobility, though he'd been born in Queens. "Welcome home, Mr. Orion," he said warmly, then surprised them both by giving Callie a genuine smile. "And welcome, Miss Grace. Mrs. Eleanor has been looking forward to meeting you properly." The entrance hall soared 3 stories high, crowned by a crystal chandelier that had once hung in a European palace. Oil paintings of stern-faced Case ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the couple's progress. Callie's artist's eye caught the subtle power dynamics in each portrait, the way they were positioned, the objects they held, the shadows that emphasized their authority. "Darling." Eleanor Case descended the grand staircase like a queen from a bygone era, but her smile was warm and real. Unlike Victoria's carefully maintained beauty, Eleanor wore her age with grace. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her ice-blue eyes sparkled with intelligence and humor. "Grandmother," Orion embraced her, some of his tension easing. "This is Callie." Eleanor took both of Callie's hands in hers, studying her face. "At last. I've been following your work at the student galleries. Your piece on urban transformation was particularly moving." Before Callie could respond, Victoria Case's voice cut through the moment like a frozen blade. "How lovely that we're all making introductions in the hallway, like common shopkeepers." She stood in the doorway to the formal living room, every inch the society matron in a tailored Oscar de la Renta dress. Not a hair dared stray from her perfect blonde coif, not a wrinkle marred her Botox-smoothed forehead. But her eyes, the same ice blue as Eleanor's, held none of her mother-in-law's warmth. "Shall we move somewhere more appropriate?" The question carried the weight of command. The formal living room was a study in calculated opulence. French antiques, Persian rugs, and what Callie's trained eye recognized as original Monets created an atmosphere of old money and older expectations. Victoria positioned herself on a Louis XVI settee, like a monarch holding court. "So," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "do tell us how you and Orion met. I'm sure it's a fascinating story." "Mother," Orion's warning tone was clear. "What? I simply want to know more about the barista who's captured my son's heart." Eleanor intervened smoothly. "Harrison, we could use some refreshments, and perhaps we could move to the garden room. The light there is much better for admiring Callie's necklace. Is that a paintbrush charm? How delightful." The garden room proved to be a conservatory filled with exotic plants and comfortable furniture, clearly Eleanor's domain. Here, Victorian formality gave way to artistic touches, hand-painted tiles, colourful cushions, and what Callie realised must be Eleanor's own watercolours hanging between the windows. "Now then," Eleanor said once they were settled, "tell me more about your art therapy program. I understand you're doing wonderful work with children from the shelters." Victoria's perfectly manicured hand clenched around her teacup. "Really, Mother Eleanor, shouldn't we discuss more pressing matters, like how this situation will affect the company's standing?" "The only situation," Orion's voice was steel wrapped in silk, "is that I'm marrying the woman I love and we're having a baby." The teacup in Victoria's hand rattled against its saucer. "A baby? Already?" Her laugh was brittle. "How convenient." "Victoria," Eleanor's soft voice carried a warning, "remember your own story." Colour flooded Victoria's cheeks. Before she could respond, Harrison announced that dinner was served. The formal dining room could have hosted state dinners. A table that could seat 30 was set intimately for 4. the family's Tiffany silver gleaming under another crystal chandelier. Oil paintings of hunting scenes covered the walls, hounds and horses frozen mid-chase. "Tell me, Miss Grace," Victoria began as the first course arrived, "have you ever dined in a setting like this before?" "Mother, enough." "What? I'm simply trying to understand what kind of background our grandchild will come from." Callie set down her soup spoon, meeting Victoria's gaze steadily. "My background, Mrs. Case, is one of creativity and compassion. My mother was an art teacher who believed beauty could heal broken spirits. The children I work with may never dine with Tiffany silver, but they're learning to create their own kind of wealth, the kind that feeds the soul rather than the society pages." Eleanor's eyes sparkled with approval. "Beautifully said, my dear." Victoria's mask slipped for a moment, revealing something that might have been pain. "Pretty words won't protect this family's position in society. Pretty pictures won't maintain the relationships we've spent generations building." "No," Orion agreed, taking Callie's hand. "Love will do that. Real relationships, not social contracts. The kind of connections that matter." "Matter?" Victoria stood abruptly. "Do you think your father built this company on feelings, on artistic expression? He understood duty, tradition, the weight of legacy." "Victoria," Eleanor's voice cut through the tension, "look at me, dear. Really look at me. 28 years ago, I welcomed you into this family despite others' objections. I saw in you what my son saw: strength, determination, love. Now it's your turn to do the same." Victoria turned to stare out the window at the gardens her decorator's eye had helped design years ago. Times were different then. "Were they?" Eleanor rose, moving to stand beside her daughter-in-law. "Or have you simply forgotten the young woman who dared to love a case? The girl who chose love over social expectation?" "That girl was naive," Victoria whispered, but her voice wavered. "That girl was brave," Eleanor corrected gently. "And somewhere inside you, she still exists." Callie watched the interaction with an artist's understanding of shadow and light, of the layers that made up a person's true portrait. In Victoria's rigid posture, she saw not just rejection, but fear. Fear of change, of loss, of a world shifting beyond her control. "Mrs. Case," Callie spoke softly, "I'm not here to take your son away. I'm here to add to your family, to bring new colors to its canvas. Our child will know both worlds, the beauty of art and the power of tradition. They'll understand both the value of a perfect table setting and the joy of paint-stained fingers." Victoria turned, and for a moment her mask cracked completely. Callie glimpsed the decorator's daughter who'd once fallen in love with a case, who'd learned to navigate society's waters until she nearly drowned in them. "The board will have to be notified," Victoria said finally, her voice carefully controlled. "The announcement must be handled with precision. The press will be ravenous." "Take all the time you need, Mother," Orion said, his arm still protectively around Callie, "but understand this. Callie and our child are my priority now. I won't allow anyone, not even you, to make them feel unwelcome or unworthy." Eleanor beamed at her grandson, pride shining in her eyes. "Well said, my boy. Now shall we have dessert? Cook has prepared her famous chocolate soufflé, and I believe significant moments are always better celebrated with chocolate." As they moved back to the garden room for dessert, Callie glanced back to see Victoria still standing by the window, her reflection showing an expression of both loss and longing. In that moment, Callie understood something profound. Victoria's reaction came not just from social prejudice, but from fear of losing her son to a love as powerful as the one she'd once shared with his father. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, Eleanor pulled Callie aside in the conservatory. The setting sun painted the glass walls in shades of gold and rose, creating a moment of perfect beauty. "You handle yourself with grace, my dear," the older woman said warmly. Don't let Victoria's thorns discourage you. She'll come around, especially once she holds that baby in her arms. Thank you, Callie whispered, hugging her future grandmother-in-law, for everything. Welcome to the family, Callie, Eleanor replied. It's about time we had some fresh air in these old rooms, and perhaps, she added with a twinkle in her eye, some new art on these ancient walls. As they drove home through the gathering dusk, Orion kept glancing at Callie, concern etched on his face. I'm sorry about my mother. Are you okay? Callie placed her hand over his on the gear shift. I'm better than okay. Tonight showed me exactly why I fell in love with you. Your strength, your conviction, your heart, and it showed me where those qualities came from. She smiled, thinking of Eleanor's unwavering support. My grandmother adores you, Orion chuckled, though I think she'd disown me if I'd let you get away. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights creating a golden glow around them. Finally, Orion spoke again. You know this is just the beginning, right? There will be more storms to weather. The board, the press, society gossips. I know, Callie replied, her hand drifting to her stomach, but we have something stronger than their judgment. Love, family, and a really fierce grandmother on our side. Orion's laugh filled the car, and Callie felt hope bloom in her heart. They had crossed the first hurdle, faced the first storm. Whatever came next, they would face it together, strengthened by the bonds of true family, not the kind bound by social expectations, but the kind bound by love. Chapter 6. Pressure Points. The morning headlines screamed across every major newspaper in New York. Case airs coffee shop romance. Corporate dynasty meets starving artist. Case Industries stock drops as CEO announces unexpected engagement. Orion stood at his office window, 58 floors above Manhattan, watching the city wake while his phone buzzed incessantly. The board meeting was scheduled for 9, and he could already feel the sharks circling. The Financial Times article had been particularly brutal, questioning his judgment and leadership capabilities. A soft knock preceded his assistant's entrance. Sir, your mother is on line 1. The PR team needs an immediate response to the Wall Street Journal, and this just arrived. She handed him a thick manila envelope. Inside, glossy photos spilled across his desk, paparazzi shots of him and Callie at various moments they'd thought private. Their kiss in Central Park, dinner at that quiet Italian place in Brooklyn, Callie teaching her art class, Orion watching from the doorway with obvious adoration. The photos came with a note. The Daily Mail offers their congratulations and would love an exclusive interview. His phone buzzed again, a message from Callie that made his heart clench. They're outside the coffee shop. Maria had to call the police to clear a path for customers. Maybe I should take some time off. The boardroom looked like a war room when Orion entered. 12 members of the board sat around the massive mahogany table, each with tablets displaying real-time stock prices and media coverage. James Werner, his father's oldest friend and head of the board, stood at the window, his reflection grim in the glass. The Asian markets are nervous, James began without preamble. Singapore is particularly concerned about stability. The company's fundamentals haven't changed, Orion countered, taking his seat at the head of the table. Our Q3 projections. This isn't about projections, Charles Whitman, the eldest board member, interrupted. This is about perception. You're the face of Case Industries, Orion. Your personal choices reflect on all of us. Margaret Astor, the only female board member and a close friend of his mother's, slid forward a tablet showing social media trends. The hashtag number Case Coffee Romance is trending. Some find it charming, but our serious investors are questioning your commitment to the company's future. Let me be clear, Orion's voice cut through the murmurs. My personal life is not up for board approval. Callie will be my wife, the mother of my child, and a part of this family's future. If anyone has concerns about my leadership beyond that, I suggest you review our quarterly growth figures." "A child?" James turned sharply. "Already?" The implied accusation hung heavy in the air. "Yes, a child." Orion stood, his hands flat on the table. "My child, a case heir. And if anyone in this room dares to suggest what I think you're suggesting, you can tender your resignation now." The tension crackled like electricity. Then Alexander Chen, the youngest board member, cleared his throat. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The public loves a good love story. Modern royalty meets talented artist. We could spin this. She's not a story to be spun. Orion's voice was deadly quiet. She's the woman I love. The meeting deteriorated from there. Proposals were made about managing Callie's public image, suggestions about postponing any formal announcements until after the Asian merger talks. Each idea made Orion's blood boil hotter. That evening, he found refuge in Callie's tiny Brooklyn apartment. She was at her easel, working on a new piece. Dark swirls of color surrounding a bright center, like a storm around a calm eye. "They're calling you my coffee shop princess," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "The papers can't decide if it's a fairy tale or a scandal." "And what do you think it is?" She leaned back against him, paint-stained hands covering his. "The only real thing in my life." Their moment of peace was shattered by his phone. The screen showed photos from that afternoon. Callie at her art therapy session, working with children. The caption read, "Case heir's fiancé, charitable work or PR move." "They're following the kids now," Callie whispered, horror in her voice. "I had to move the sessions to a private location. Some of these children are from shelters. They need privacy." The next blow came at the Metropolitan Museum's annual gala. Victoria had insisted they attend, claiming absence would only fuel speculation. Callie wore a simple but elegant black dress, her natural beauty outshining the overdone sophistication around them. The whispers followed them like poisonous shadows. "I heard she's already pregnant." Obviously a gold digger. The board must be furious. Margaret Astor intercepted them by the Greek statues, her smile sharp as a knife. "Darling, I'm hosting a little etiquette refresher course for some of our younger society members. Callie, you must join us. We can't have you embarrassing the family at important functions." Before Callie could respond, Eleanor appeared like an avenging angel. "The only embarrassment, Margaret, is your transparent attempt at condescension. Callie's grace comes from authenticity, something you might want to refresh yourself on." The society pages the next day focused on the growing rift in New York's elite circles. Every interaction was analyzed, every gesture interpreted. Callie's art show at Parsons became a media circus, with more photographers than art lovers attending. "Maybe we should wait," Callie suggested one night, as they sat on her fire escape watching the city lights. "Give everyone time to adjust." "No." Orion's voice was firm. "I won't let them dictate our happiness. The board, the press, society, they don't get a vote in our love story." But the pressure continued mounting. The Asian merger talks grew more complicated. Board members started scheduling emergency meetings that ran late into the night. Victoria's social circle began a subtle campaign of exclusion. Callie's name, accidentally, left off guest lists. Invitations mysteriously lost. The art world wasn't much kinder. Some of Callie's fellow students accused her of selling out. Others tried desperately to befriend her for connections. Her paintings became subjects of intense scrutiny, critics searching for hidden meanings about wealth and class. One particularly brutal day, after another board meeting where his leadership had been questioned, Orion found Callie in her studio at Parsons. She was working on a new piece, a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis made of newspaper clippings about their relationship. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish, she said softly, not turning from her canvas. Your life was simpler before me. Simpler isn't better. He moved to stand behind her, hands on her shoulders. Before you, I was existing, not living. You make me want to be more than just my father's son, more than a CEO, more than a case. And what do I make you want to be? Happy. He turned her to face him. You make me want to be happy. Their moment was interrupted by another crisis. Photos of them leaked from what was supposed to be a private doctor's appointment. The media frenzy around Callie's pregnancy reached new heights. The final straw came during a charity event at the New York Public Library. Callie had been working for months on an art therapy program for underprivileged children, but the society matrons treated it like a quaint hobby. How sweet, Regina Vanderbilt simpered. Though perhaps now that you're joining the Case family, you should focus on more appropriate charitable endeavors. The Junior League has several committees. Callie, who had been patient through months of subtle digs and not-so-subtle insults, finally snapped. My work helps children heal from trauma through creative expression. What exactly does the Junior League do besides organize lunch meetings to discuss organizing more lunch meetings? The gasps were audible. The society pages had a field day. That night, in the sanctuary of her apartment, Orion held Callie as she cried, pregnancy hormones mixing with genuine hurt and frustration. I won't let them change you, he promised fiercely. You're perfect exactly as you are. I'm not perfect, she smiled through her tears. I'm just real. Sometimes I think that's what scares them most. The pressure seemed to come from all sides now, board members hinting at votes of no confidence, society matrons spreading vicious rumors, media outlets offering obscene amounts of money for insider stories about their relationship. Even Eleanor, their strongest supporter, worried. The vultures are circling, dears. You need to be stronger than ever. They tried to create moments of peace amidst the chaos. Late-night painting sessions where Orion attempted to learn art, badly but enthusiastically. Early morning coffee dates at Stella before the paparazzi arrived. Quiet dinners on Callie's fire escape, planning their future. But the world kept intruding. Every tender moment seemed to be captured by long-range lenses. Every private joy turned into public spectacle. The weight of expectations, judgment, and constant scrutiny began to take its toll. The breaking point loomed on the horizon like a gathering storm. Soon, they would face their greatest test, one that would separate them for 3 long years. But for now, they held each other in the quiet of night, their love a shelter against the pressures trying to tear them apart. Whatever happens, Callie whispered one night, her head on his chest, don't forget who you are. Not Orion Case, the CEO, not the heir to a dynasty, but the man who helped me wash dishes in a coffee shop, the man who sees beauty in unexpected places, the man I fell in love with. And you, he kissed her forehead, don't let them dim your light, your art, your heart, your truth. That's what I fell in love with, not some society-approved version of you. Outside, photographers waited in the shadows, board members plotted in wood-paneled offices, society matrons sharpened their knives of gossip and judgment. But in that moment, holding each other in the dark, Orion and Callie were stronger than all of it. They didn't know then that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The choices made under pressure would lead to years of separation and pain. But they had created something real in a world of artifice, something true in a landscape of lies. Love, they were learning, wasn't just about grand gestures and fairy tale moments. It was about choosing each other every day, especially when the choice was hardest. It was about standing firm when the world tried to pull them apart. The pressure points were mounting, testing their strength, their commitment, their love. But like the butterflies in Callie's paintings, they would either emerge stronger from this chrysalis of chaos or break trying. Neither option scared them as much as the thought of surrendering to a world that wanted to change who they were at their core. Chapter 7. The Separation. The breaking point came during month 4 of Callie's pregnancy. What began as mild discomfort escalated into a crisis that landed her in Mount Sinai's high-risk unit. The sterile white walls seemed to close in as Dr. Sarah Chen delivered the news. Complete bed rest, the doctor insisted. The stress is affecting both mother and babies. Babies? Orion's voice cracked. Twins, Dr. Chen confirmed, pointing to the ultrasound, which makes this situation even more critical. That night, their first major confrontation erupted when James Werner appeared at the hospital. The board chairman's timing couldn't have been worse. Callie had just endured another round of tests, and Orion was reviewing her medical reports. "The merger's falling apart," James announced without preamble. "The London office needs you there. Tonight." "My fiancée is in the hospital." Orion's voice was deadly quiet. "The babies are being given the best care money can buy," James cut in. "But if this merger fails, what kind of future can you provide them?" Callie watched the conflict play across Orion's face. "Go," she said softly. "I'll be fine." "Like hell," Orion stood, facing James. "Find someone else." "There is no one else." James slammed his hand on the wall. "Your father built this company from nothing. Are you really willing to let it crumble for—" "Choose your next words very carefully," Orion warned. The tension broke when Callie's monitors began beeping. Her blood pressure had spiked dangerously. Dr. Chen rushed in, ordering everyone out. In the hallway, Eleanor appeared like an avenging angel. "James Werner, you pompous fool," she snapped. "Get out of this hospital before I have security remove you." Later that night, after Callie stabilized, she and Orion had their own confrontation. "You have to go," she insisted. "Your father's legacy. You and these babies are my legacy. And what happens when the company fails? When everyone blames me for destroying the Case empire?" Callie's voice broke. "I won't let our children carry that burden." 2 days later, Orion left for London. The goodbye was agonizing, promises of daily calls, of returning soon, of love stronger than distance. But business has a way of consuming time. 2 weeks became 4. Video calls grew shorter, interrupted by emergency meetings. The London office had issues only Orion could handle. Then Hong Kong needed attention, Singapore, Dubai. The first major confrontation of their separation came 6 weeks in. Orion had missed 3 important doctor's appointments. When he finally called, Callie was sitting in her hospital room, surrounded by Eleanor's flowers and her own half-finished sketches. "The Dubai deal is crucial," he explained, looking exhausted on the video screen. "Just 2 more weeks. I needed you today." Callie cut in. "Dr. Chen said there might be complications." "Where were you?" "I was in a meeting that could secure our children's future. They need a father more than they need a fortune." The screen froze, their pain captured in digital stasis. When the connection resumed, both were crying. "I'm trying to do the right thing," Orion whispered. The right thing stopped being right the moment it became more important than love. The weeks dragged on. Victoria began visiting the hospital, her intentions unclear. One particular visit led to an explosive confrontation. "Perhaps this separation is providential," Victoria suggested, arranging flowers by Callie's bed. "It gives everyone time to reconsider." "Reconsider what?" Callie's voice was steel. "Arrangements could be made. The children would want for nothing." "Get out!" Callie's quiet fury stopped Victoria mid-sentence. "How dare you suggest I would ever give up my children? I'm trying to help." "No, you're trying to erase me, like you erased yourself to fit into this world. But I won't do it. These babies are cases, yes, but they're also grace. They'll know art and passion and real love, not just duty and appearances." Victoria fled, leaving Callie shaking with anger and fear. Eleanor found her later, tearfully sketching her twins as she imagined them, one with Orion's determination, one with her creative spirit. "Let it out, dear," Eleanor held her. "Sometimes we need to break before we can become stronger." The distance took its toll on Orion too. During one video call, after missing another ultrasound, he looked more ghost than man. "The board is pleased," he said hollowly. "The Asian expansion is exceeding expectations." "And what about your expansion?" Callie touched her growing belly. "Your children are growing too while you're playing corporate savior." His face crumpled. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair. You're missing everything. Their first movements, their heartbeats, the way they dance when I play music. You're missing us becoming a family." "I'm doing this for our family." "No," Callie's voice broke. "You're doing this for the Case family name. Our family, the one we're supposed to be building together, that's just collateral damage." The screen went black. He didn't call back for 3 days. The final confrontation came in Callie's 7th month. Orion had been gone for nearly 4 months, with no return date in sight. The twins were active now, their movements a constant reminder of what their father was missing. "I can't do this anymore," Callie said during a rare, clear video call. "I can't keep watching you choose everything else over us." "That's not what I'm doing!" But his eyes betrayed him, darting to his phone as it buzzed with another urgent message. "When was my last ultrasound?" His silence was deafening. "What color did I paint the nursery?" More silence. "You don't know." Callie's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. "Because while you've been saving the company, you've been losing us piece by piece. Callie, please. I love you enough to let you go," she whispered. "Find your way back to yourself, Orion. The man I fell in love with knew what really mattered." That night, she wrote the letter. Eleanor helped her seal it with a butterfly drawing, a reminder of transformation and hope. 3 years would pass before he found it, years of missed moments and hollow successes. In the hospital room that had become her temporary home, Callie continued creating. She painted butterflies on the walls, symbols of change, of breaking free, of finding new life after the cocoon. The twins grew stronger, defying early concerns. And if she cried at night, watching storm clouds gather over the city, only Eleanor knew. If she kept her phone close, hoping for calls that came less and less frequently, she never admitted it. She poured her pain into her art, transforming grief into beauty, just as she'd always done. Sometimes, late at night, she'd talk to her unborn children about their father, not the CEO lost in boardrooms across the ocean, but the man who'd once helped her wash dishes in a coffee shop, who'd seen magic in her art, who'd chosen love over legacy before the world reminded him that choices have consequences. "He'll find his way back," she whispered to her belly. "And if he doesn't, we'll be strong enough to fly on our own." Eleanor, watching over her chosen granddaughter, kept faith alive. "Love stories worth telling are never simple," she would say, helping Callie add another butterfly to the hospital room's collection. "Sometimes the longest roads lead us right back where we belong." Chapter 8. The letter. 3 years had carved deep lines into Orion Case's face. Success had come at a crushing price. The merger that took him away from Callie had led to others, each demanding more of his time, his energy, his soul. The corner office on the 58th floor had become both his sanctuary and his prison. On this particular autumn evening, rain lashed against the windows of his study in the Case mansion, echoing that first fateful night at Stella Coffee House. He rarely visited this room anymore, preferring to work late at the office where memories couldn't haunt him. But tonight, something drew him here. His grandmother's passing a week ago had left a void in the family. Eleanor Case had been their moral compass, their connection to humanity in a world obsessed with wealth and status. Her final words to him, whispered from her hospital bed, still echoed in his mind. "The draw, darling. Sometimes we need to lose our way to find our truth." Now, sitting in his father's old leather chair, Orion finally understood. The bottom drawer of the massive oak desk had remained locked since his return from London 3 years ago. Eleanor had always kept the key, though he'd never questioned why. The key she'd pressed into his hand before passing now felt heavy in his palm. His hands trembled slightly as he inserted it into the lock. The drawer opened with a soft creak, revealing a single envelope adorned with a delicate butterfly drawing. His heart stopped. He would know that artistry anywhere. Callie's distinctive style, her soul expressed in every line. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but the butterfly seemed to flutter with life, just like the ones from their first real date at the Botanical Gardens. With unsteady fingers, he opened the envelope, and Callie's words, written 3 years ago, spilled out like tears. My love, by the time you read this, so much will have changed. I understand now what I couldn't before. You're fighting for your family's legacy, for the future you believe our child deserves. But in doing so, you're missing the present we could be sharing. I've watched you through video calls, seen the weight of responsibility crushing the man I fell in love with. The man who wasn't afraid to wash dishes in a coffee shop, who saw beauty in unexpected places, who chose love over legacy that night in the rain. Your mother thinks I don't understand your world, but I do. I understand it's built on sacrifice, on choosing duty over desire. I see you drowning in those expectations, becoming someone you never wanted to be. Remember the butterfly pavilion? You told me that transformation requires courage. Well, my love, sometimes it also requires letting go. I love you enough to let you find your way, even if that path leads away from us. Our baby moves inside me as I write this, strong and determined like their father. I'll tell them about you, not the CEO, not the case heir, but the man who brought color into my world, who believed in my art, who taught me that love can bridge any divide. I don't blame you for staying away. How could I when your sense of duty is one of the things I love most about you? But I want you to know that whatever happens, you have a home with us. Not in the mansion, not in the boardroom, but in the simple, beautiful life we dreamed of building together. If you're reading this, it means you're finally ready to look into the drawer you've been avoiding. Maybe you're ready to look into your heart too. Whatever you find there, know that I loved you completely, unconditionally, and without regret. You once told me that some things are worth more than money. I believe the same is true of pride, of duty, of everything that's keeping you across an ocean, while our hearts beat in sync despite the distance. The coffee shop still makes stormbreakers. Your grandmother visits every Thursday to get one, saying it helps her feel closer to that night when fate brought us together. Maybe someday you'll find your way back there too, back to the moment before the world told you that love wasn't enough. I'm not asking you to choose me over your family's legacy. I'm asking you to remember that you don't have to choose at all. Real love multiplies, it doesn't divide. It builds bridges, not walls. You taught me that. Our child will know love, creativity, and the courage to be themselves. I'll make sure of that. And if someday you want to be part of that journey, we'll be here. Not waiting, because I want you to be free to find your own path, but hoping, believing, loving you from wherever we are. Take care of your heart, my love. It's a beautiful one, even if the world has made you forget that. With eternal love, Callie. The letter fell from Orion's trembling hands. Rain continued to pour outside, but he barely heard it over the roaring in his ears. 3 years. He'd lost 3 years to pride, to duty, to the expectations that had shaped his entire life. Memories flooded back. Callie's laugh in the coffee shop, paint fights on the rooftop, the first flutter of their baby under his palm. He'd traded those moments for boardroom victories and merger agreements, telling himself it was for their future, never realizing he was sacrificing the present they could have shared. His phone buzzed. Another board meeting, another crisis demanding his attention. For the first time in 3 years, he ignored it. Instead, he pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys as he searched news archives. There they were, small mentions in local papers. Callie had opened her art therapy center in Brooklyn, funded by a grant from an anonymous donor. Eleanor's work, he realized with a pang. She'd never stopped believing in Callie's dreams, even when he'd lost sight of them. More recent articles showed Callie at gallery openings, her work celebrated for its raw emotion and transformative themes. In every photo, she glowed with a quiet strength. Their children, twins he learned with a start, often captured in the background, their faces bearing stamps of both their parents. The rain suddenly intensified and lightning split the sky. In that brief, brilliant flash, Orion caught his reflection in the window, a successful man by society's standards, but a failure by the measure of his own heart. Without conscious thought, he grabbed his coat and keys. The storm raged outside, but a stronger storm raged within him. 3 years of choices had led him here, to this moment of clarity in the rain. He had a lot to make up for, possibly more than could ever be forgiven. But as he headed for his car, Callie's butterfly drawing tucked safely in his pocket, he finally understood what his grandmother's last words really meant. Sometimes we need to lose our way completely before we can find our way back home. And home, he now knew with crystal clarity, wasn't this mansion, wasn't his corner office, wasn't anywhere but where love waited patiently for his return. Chapter 9. Return to Love. The storm that raged across New York City that night seemed to mirror the turmoil in Orion's heart as he raced through the rain-slicked streets. His hands gripped the steering wheel of his Aston Martin so tightly his knuckles showed white, Callie's letter burning a hole in his breast pocket. 3 years of absence crashed down on him with every mile. He'd missed their children's first breaths, first steps, first words, all in the name of duty and family legacy. The irony of losing his real family while protecting a corporate one wasn't lost on him. His phone exploded with messages from the office. Another crisis, another meeting, another demand for his time. He silenced it without a second thought. For the first time in 3 years, his priorities crystallized with perfect clarity. Lightning illuminated the city in stark flashes as he pulled up to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. A nurse at reception recognized him immediately. The prodigal CEO's face had been splashed across enough business magazines over the years. "Mr. Case," she said, eyes wide. "Miss Grace is in the maternity ward. There were complications with—" He was already running, taking the stairs 2 at a time because he couldn't bear to wait for the elevator. The maternity ward, of course. History repeating itself, giving him a chance to right his greatest wrong. The ward was quiet, except for the steady beeping of monitors and the distant roll of thunder. Through the window of room 418, he saw her. Callie lay in the hospital bed, her face turned toward the window where rain painted patterns on the glass. Even after 3 years, the sight of her took his breath away. He stood frozen in the doorway, drinking in every detail. Her hair was longer now, the dark curls streaked with subtle gold. An easel stood in the corner, a half-finished painting capturing the storm outside. Some things hadn't changed. She still found beauty in chaos. "Are you going to stand there all night?" Her voice was soft but clear, and she hadn't turned from the window. "How did you know it was me?" Now she turned, those amber eyes he'd dreamed about finding his. A mother knows all sorts of things, like when her children's father is finally ready to come home. The simple word home broke something in him. He crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside her bed. "Callie, I'm so sorry. I'm so desperately sorry." Her hand found his hair, fingers running through it just as they used to. "I know." "The letter," his voice cracked. "I only just found it. Grandmother, ... She kept it safe until you were ready." Callie's smile held sadness and understanding in equal measure. "Eleanor never lost faith in you. Neither did I." I lost faith in myself, he admitted, looking up at her. I became everything I never wanted to be. No, she shook her head. You just forgot who you were for a while, but you're here now. The twins. He hesitated, fear gripping his heart. Do they know about me? Callie reached for her phone, showing him a photo. Two beautiful children, a boy and girl around 3 years old, sat at tiny easels in what looked like an art studio. The boy had his father's determined expression, the girl Callie's creative light in her eyes. Aria and Atlas, she said softly. They know their father is a man who builds things, who helps people, who loved their mother in the rain. They're proud of you, even though they've never met you. Tears fell freely down his face now. How can you be so forgiving? I abandoned you, abandoned them. You abandoned yourself first, she said, touching his cheek. The man I fell in love with would never have chosen duty over love. Not really. You had to learn that lesson the hard way. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Miss Grace, we need to check your vitals. What's wrong? Orion asked, suddenly remembering where they were. Why are you here? Pregnancy complications, Callie said calmly. Just like last time, except this time it's just exhaustion. Single motherhood while running an art therapy center isn't easy. The nurse worked efficiently around them, checking monitors and making notes. Blood pressure's better, she reported. The rest seems to have helped. When they were alone again, Orion took Callie's hand in both of his. I want to come home, he whispered. Not to the mansion, not to the life everyone expected, but to you, to our family, if you'll have me. What about the company? The board? They'll survive. I've spent 3 years being the CEO they wanted. Now it's time to be the father our children need, the man you deserve. Lightning flashed again, and in that moment of brilliant clarity, Callie saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't the polished CEO who'd stayed away, but the man who'd once helped her wash dishes in a coffee shop. The twins are with your grandmother's nurse, she said. Martha brings them to visit every evening around 8. Orion checked his watch. 45 minutes. His heart raced at the thought of meeting his children for the first time. They're going to love you, Callie assured him, reading his fear. You're their father. That love was born with them. Will you tell me about them? Everything I've missed? So she did. She told him about Atlas's first word being paint, about Aria's habit of making up stories for her brother, about their shared love of thunderstorms because they made the sky pretty like Mommy's pictures. As she spoke, Orion felt pieces of himself falling back into place. Not the CEO, not the case heir, but the man who'd walked into a coffee shop one rainy night and found his heart. The storm outside began to ease, just as it had that first night. But this time, instead of walking away, Orion was walking back, to love, to family, to the truth of who he was meant to be. Stay, Callie said softly as thunder rumbled in the distance. Forever, he promised, and this time they both knew he meant it. Chapter 10. Double Joy. The moment that would change everything began at 7:55 p.m., just minutes before the twins' usual visiting time. Martha, Eleanor's former nurse who had become the children's caretaker, texted Callie that they were on their way up to the maternity ward. Orion paced the hospital room, his heart thundering in his chest. In moments, he would meet his children, not through photographs or stories, but in flesh and blood. 3 years of missed moments weighed heavily on his shoulders. They're going to love you, Callie reassured him again, watching him from her hospital bed. Just be yourself. Which self? He asked softly. The CEO? The prodigal father? The man who stops pacing long enough to breathe, she smiled. The one who's terrified but here anyway. That's the real you. The sound of children's laughter echoed down the hallway, growing closer. Orion froze, his hand instinctively finding Callie's for support. Then they were there, two perfect storms of energy bursting into the room. Atlas, dark-haired and serious-eyed like his father, carried a folder of drawings. Arya, with her mother's curls and creative spirit, clutched a small stuffed dragon. They stopped short at the sight of the stranger by their mother's bed. But it wasn't fear in their eyes. It was curiosity, recognition from the photos Callie had shown them over the years. "Daddy!" Arya's voice was soft but sure, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Atlas stepped slightly in front of his sister, protective even at 3. "You're the man from Mommy's pictures, the one who builds things." Orion knelt down to their level, tears blurring his vision. "Yes," he managed. "I'm your father." The twins exchanged a look that spoke volumes, the silent communication of siblings who'd shared everything since the womb. Then Arya stepped forward, holding out her dragon. "This is Storm," she announced, "because Mommy says you met in a storm." "He keeps bad dreams away," Atlas added seriously, still watching with their father's analytical gaze. Orion took the dragon with trembling hands. "Thank you. That's very kind of you." "Did you really help make our art room?" Arya asked, edging closer. "Your art room?" "At the center," Atlas explained. "Mommy says you helped make it happen, even though you were far away." Callie had used the anonymous donations he'd been sending, channeled through Eleanor, to create something beautiful for their children. Even in his absence, she'd found ways to keep him present in their lives. "Would you like to see our pictures?" Atlas held out his folder, his reserve starting to crack. "I'd love to." The twins settled on either side of him on the floor, spreading out their artwork. Atlas's drawings showed buildings and bridges, precise lines that hinted at his father's architectural mind. Arya's were explosions of color and imagination, dragons soaring through rainbow skies. "This is our family," Arya pointed to one drawing. 4 figures stood under a stormy sky, Mommy, Atlas herself, and a tall figure she'd drawn slightly apart. "I left space for you." Something broke and healed simultaneously in Orion's heart. He gathered both children into his arms, and they came willingly, their small bodies fitting against his as if they'd been waiting for this embrace. "I'm so sorry I was gone so long," he whispered into their hair. Atlas is straight and dark like his, Arya's wild curls like their mother's. "It's okay," Atlas said with a child's simple wisdom. "You were building important things." "But now you're home," Arya added, snuggling closer. From her bed, Callie watched the reunion through tears. Martha stood in the doorway, dabbing at her own eyes with her handkerchief. "Eleanor would be so happy," the nurse murmured. She never lost faith this day would come. The twins soon had Orion thoroughly enchanted, showing him their art projects, telling him about their friends at the center, explaining their favorite stories. They had Callie's gift for storytelling and his attention to detail, a perfect blend of both parents. "And Mommy's having another baby," Arya announced suddenly. "A sister. I can tell." "Brother," Atlas corrected with the certainty of a 3-year-old. "I asked the moon." Orion looked at Callie in wonder. Despite everything, their love had created something magical, not just once, but 3 times over. As the evening progressed, the twins grew sleepy. They insisted on hearing a story before leaving with Martha, and to everyone's surprise, it was Atlas who made the request. "Tell us about the storm," he said, curled up beside his father. "The one where you met Mommy." So Orion told them about a rainy night and a coffee shop, about storm breakers and unexpected love. The twins drifted off to sleep halfway through, but he continued the story anyway, watching their peaceful faces and marveling at the miracle of them. Martha gently gathered the sleeping children. "They've waited for this day," she said softly. Every night they blow kisses to your photo before bed. After she left with the twins, Orion sat on the edge of Callie's bed, overwhelmed by emotion. They're incredible, he whispered. You did such an amazing job with them. We did, she corrected. Even when you weren't here, you were part of them. Every time Atlas analyzes a problem, every time Arya dreams up a new story, that's you in them. I'm never leaving again, he promised fervently. The company, the board, none of it matters compared to this. What will you do? Exactly what my father would have wanted. Put family first. I'll restructure things, delegate more, work reasonable hours. The art therapy center needs a business manager anyway, he smiled. And I hear the coffee shop down the street makes an excellent storm breaker. Callie laughed through her tears, the sound as beautiful as he remembered. Outside, the night had cleared, stars peeking through the disappearing clouds. Their storm had finally passed, leaving behind not destruction, but renewal. Welcome home, Callie whispered, making room for him beside her on the bed. As he held her, Orion felt the movement of their third child between them. Another miracle, another chance to get things right from the beginning. Thank you for waiting, he murmured. I wasn't waiting, she corrected gently. I was living, loving, creating, but I always knew you'd find your way back to us. In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by children's artwork and the lingering echoes of their laughter, Orion and Callie began writing the next chapter of their story, not just as lovers reunited, but as parents, partners, and proof that love, when real, always finds its way home. Chapter 11. Standing Ground. The Case family mansion loomed before them once again, but this time Orion faced it with newfound strength. 2 weeks had passed since his reunion with Callie and the twins. The doctors had finally cleared her to leave the hospital, though she remained on bed rest for her current pregnancy. Victoria Case hadn't responded to any of his calls over the past fortnight. The only communication had been through lawyers, discussing potential damage control strategies for his return to the family. But today that would end. Today he would make his stand. Are you sure about this? Callie asked from the passenger seat, her hand protectively over her growing belly. In the back seat, the twins were unusually quiet, sensing the importance of the moment. More sure than I've ever been, Orion replied, helping her from the car. Atlas and Arya scrambled out, their eyes wide as they took in their grandmother's house for the first time. It looks like a castle, Arya whispered, clutching her ever-present dragon. More like a fortress, Atlas observed with their father's analytical mind. The front door opened before they reached it. Victoria stood there, elegant as always, but her face showed the strain of recent weeks. Behind her, the family lawyer hovered anxiously. This is highly irregular, the lawyer began, but Orion cut him off. No more lawyers, no more negotiations. This is family business. Victoria's gaze moved from Orion to Callie, then to the twins, who watched her with frank curiosity. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition perhaps of features that mirrored her late husband's. Come inside, she said finally. The neighbors don't need to witness this. They gathered in the formal living room where, 3 years ago, everything had begun to unravel, but now the power dynamic had shifted. Orion stood tall, one arm around Callie, the twins exploring the room with cautious excitement. Atlas, Arya, he called softly, come meet your grandmother. The children approached, their natural grace making Victoria's practiced poise seem artificial in comparison. Arya, ever the braver one, stepped forward first. You look like the lady in Mommy's pictures, she said, the one who was sad when Daddy went away. Victoria's carefully constructed mask cracked slightly. Yes, I suppose I was sad. We were all sad, Atlas added matter-of-factly, but Mummy said sometimes people need to get lost before they can find their way home. Out of the mouths of babes, Callie murmured, and Victoria's eyes snapped to her. You taught them about me. I taught them about family, Callie replied steadily. All of it. The good, the hard, the complicated. They know their heritage, both the parts you're proud of and the parts you tried to hide. Victoria sank into her chair, suddenly looking older. I only wanted to protect our family's legacy. No, Mother, Orion spoke up. You wanted to protect your idea of what our family should be. But look at your grandchildren. Really look at them. They are our legacy. As if on cue, Arya pulled out her sketchbook, showing Victoria her latest drawing, the family portrait she'd shown Orion, but now the father figure stood firmly with the others. This is our family, she explained. Daddy's home now, so we're all together. Victoria took the drawing with trembling hands. Atlas, seeing his sister's success, brought out his own artwork, precise sketches of buildings that showed remarkable talent for a 3-year-old. I want to build things like Daddy, he announced proudly, but pretty ones, like Mommy's art. They're extraordinary, Victoria whispered, touching the drawings gently. They're cases, Orion said firmly, not despite their mother, but because of her. Callie's creativity, her compassion, her strength. These are the qualities that will take our family's legacy forward. And the company, Victoria's voice was barely audible, will still thrive, but not at the cost of my children growing up without their father. Orion moved to kneel before his mother's chair. Mom, I spent 3 years trying to be the son you wanted. I lost myself, my love. Precious years with my children. I won't lose another moment. The board won't accept this easily, she warned, but her tone had shifted. The board doesn't have to accept anything. I'm restructuring the company. Better delegation, more family-friendly policies, partnerships with community arts programs. The kind of changes Dad always talked about but never had the chance to implement. Victoria's eyes filled with tears at the mention of her late husband. Jonathan would have loved them, she admitted, looking at the twins who had begun to warm to their grandmother's presence. He always said the Case legacy needed new blood, then honor his memory by accepting his grandchildren. All of them, Orion added, his hand finding Callie's belly. This little one included. Arya, with a child's perfect timing, climbed into Victoria's lap. Want to see my dragon? His name is Storm. He keeps bad dreams away. Something in Victoria finally broke. She gathered her granddaughter close, tears falling freely now. I'd love to see your dragon, sweetheart. Atlas, not to be left out, began explaining his building designs to his grandmother, who listened with growing interest and pride. Callie moved to stand beside Orion, their hands intertwined. Eleanor would be proud, she whispered. She knew this day would come, he replied softly. She never lost faith in any of us. Not you, not me, not even Mother. As the evening progressed, they watched Victoria transform. The rigid society matron melted away, replaced by a grandmother who seemed desperate to make up for lost time. She showed the twins family photos, telling them stories about their father's childhood, even bringing out some of Eleanor's old art books when she learned of their creative interests. When it was time to leave, Victoria walked them to the door. Will you come for Sunday dinner? All of you. Only if you promise to let Arya redecorate the formal dining room, Orion teased, seeing how his mother had fallen under his daughter's artistic spell. Perhaps some color wouldn't hurt, Victoria conceded, then more seriously. Callie, I'm sorry for everything. The past is past, Callie replied gently, but the future that we can build together. The twins hugged their grandmother goodbye, extracting promises of art supplies and building blocks for their next visit. As they drove away, Orion glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping children, then at Callie, who watched him with loving eyes. Thank you, he said softly. For what? for teaching our children that love is stronger than pride, for giving my mother a chance to learn the same lesson." Callie smiled, taking his hand. "Family isn't about perfection. It's about love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again." As they drove home, to their real home, where paint supplies littered the tables and children's laughter filled the halls, Orion knew they had finally bridged all the divides. The Case legacy would continue, not through cold corporate success, but through the warmth of love and the power of acceptance. Chapter 12. Full Circle. 1 year later, rain drummed against the windows of Stella Coffee House, echoing that fateful night when their story began. But this time, the old coffee shop had been transformed. Eleanor's final gift to them had been purchasing the building, ensuring this place that had brought them together would always be part of their family's legacy. Tonight, the space glowed with warmth as friends and family gathered to celebrate multiple joys. The twins' 4th birthday, the coffee shop's renovation, and the christening of their youngest baby, Eleanor, named after the grandmother who never lost faith in love. Callie stood behind the counter, where she'd first met Orion, now wearing a simple but elegant cream dress instead of her barista apron. The walls showcased artwork from her therapy center's students alongside the twins' creations. Even Victoria had contributed, surprising everyone with a hidden talent for watercolors once she finally let herself create freely. Orion entered from the rain, just as he had 4 years ago, but this time carrying a sleeping Arya, while Atlas walked beside him, seriously explaining his latest architectural design. Baby Eleanor was cradled in her grandmother Victoria's arms, a sight that still brought tears to Callie's eyes, remembering how far they'd come. The coffee shop had evolved into a unique space where both worlds met seamlessly. Corporate executives sat alongside art students, sharing ideas and stormbreakers. The newly added gallery space displayed works from emerging artists, while the expanded seating area hosted both business meetings and children's art classes. "Mommy!" Atlas called out, running to show her his latest drawing. "Look, I designed a new playground for the center. Grandmother says we can present it to the board next week." Victoria smiled, gently rocking Eleanor. "He has his father's business sense and his mother's creativity. A perfect blend." Arya stirred in Orion's arms, her eyes fluttering open. "Did I miss the cake?" "Not yet, Princess," Orion laughed, setting her down. "Why don't you show everyone your special project?" Arya's face lit up as she ran to the wall where a cloth covered her masterpiece. The gathered crowd, family, friends, employees from both the company and the art center, turned to watch as she dramatically pulled the cloth away. There, in vibrant colors and bold strokes that showed talent beyond her years, was a portrait of their family. But it was more than just faces. It told their entire story. The coffee shop in rain, butterflies emerging from chrysalises, bridges spanning impossible divides, and at the center, a heart made of storm clouds and sunshine. "It's called Love Knows No Boundaries," she announced proudly, using the phrase she'd heard her parents say so often. Tears welled in Callie's eyes as Orion wrapped his arms around her from behind. "She sees everything," he whispered. "All the pain, all the joy, all the love that brought us here." Maria, the original owner who now served as the coffee shop's manager, brought out a massive cake decorated with both butterflies and buildings, a perfect representation of their blended family's interests. The twins insisted on serving the first piece to their grandmother Victoria, who accepted it with misty eyes. As the celebration continued, Orion clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. 4 years ago, I walked into this coffee shop as a man who thought he knew everything about success," he began. "I was wrong. Real success isn't measured in stock prices or social status. It's measured in moments like these. Family gathered together, love freely given and received, bridges built instead of walls." He turned to Callie, taking her hand. You taught me that some things are worth more than money. Our children teach me every day that creativity and compassion are the greatest legacy we can leave. And this place, he gestured around the coffee shop, reminds me that sometimes the best things in life come with a side of Stormbreaker coffee. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Baby Eleanor chose that moment to coo loudly, bringing more chuckles. To family, Victoria raised her cup, her voice thick with emotion, in all its beautiful, unexpected forms. To love, Atlas added seriously, holding up his hot chocolate. To butterflies and storms, Arya chimed in, making everyone smile. As they all raised their cups in toast, the rain outside began to ease. Through the windows, a rainbow appeared over the city skyline, nature's own celebration of love's triumph over adversity. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the twins had fallen asleep on the coffee shop's new window seats, Orion and Callie stood in the doorway where they'd first met. Baby Eleanor slept peacefully in her mother's arms, while Victoria sat nearby, contentedly watching over all her grandchildren. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if it hadn't rained that night, Callie mused. We would have found each other somehow, Orion replied confidently. Some love stories are written in the stars. Or in the storms, she smiled, leaning into him. Above them, the newly restored sign of Stella Coffee House glowed warmly, now adorned with a small butterfly logo, a testament to transformation and new beginnings. Inside, their children's laughter echoed in dreams, while outside, the city that had witnessed their love story continued its endless dance of light and shadow. They had proved that love truly knows no boundaries, not of class, not of background, not even of time. Their story had become a legend in both their worlds. The CEO who chose love over legacy, only to find that love was the greatest legacy of all. As another storm gathered on the horizon, they smiled, knowing that every raindrop carried memories of their beginning, and every storm brought the promise of transformation. They had weathered their storms together, emerging stronger, their love deeper, their family bonds unbreakable. Their journey had come full circle, but this was not an ending. It was a continuation, a daily choice to love, to create, to build bridges instead of walls. And in the years to come, their story would inspire others to believe in the power of love to transform lives, heal wounds, and bring magic to ordinary moments. For in the end, they had created something rare and precious, a love story that transcended social boundaries, a family that celebrated differences, and a legacy that would live on through their children's children, painted in the colors of storm clouds and sunshine, coffee and paint, butterflies and dreams. Subscribe if you liked.